Welcome to the Pastor's Podcast. This is Pastor Scott, and Matt and Leanne Sawicki are with me today. Hey guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Excited. So why don't we give a little bit of a introduction? Maybe we should talk about the Jets.
Oh,
No,
please
no.
Pass.
Next question.
Which is something that they can't do as well.
It's a problem this season, huh?
Yeah.
Or is that just
every season.
Yeah.
Next question.
Sorry.
Sorry.
This is not the marriage trolling episode.
No. What? Do I remember? Were you a Bears fan?
I mean,
Good memory.
I know. Yes.
Used to be, grew up, but now you're a Jets fan.
But now, no. I would not go that far.
Yeah. Well, she can't name anybody on the Bears, but she'll probably
So
name
Mike Ditka.
Yeah. Coach Ditka. Yeah.
Walter Payton.
Yeah. There you go. Sweetness.
So why don't you guys give us a little bit of an update, maybe, or introduction to yourselves, who you are, maybe how long you've been at Cornerstone, how long you've been married, family.
Yeah. Well, you want to kick it off?
Sure. We've been coming to Cornerstone for as long as we've lived in LA, which is almost 8 years, which is wild.
8 years.
Isn't that
8
crazy?
years. Wild. We've been married for 7. Scott married us.
Scott.
So
That was a really fun wedding, by
Yeah.
the
It was
way.
a fun
Wasn't
wedding.
it?
Yeah, it really was. It was a special time.
It really
Yeah.
was. It was beautiful.
We all looked a lot younger.
We did.
Yeah.
And more rested.
Oh my goodness. Totally.
Yeah, we've been married for 7, and we have a 15-month-old son, Julian, our little COVID baby.
Hence the less rested.
Yes. Hence the less rested.
But he's getting pretty good at that, though.
Yes.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
And so you guys, navigated kind of that. He wasn't born until after COVID started.
He was born in the
Yeah, he was born in the middle of.
middle.
He was in July.
July of
2020.
2020.
Yeah, but we had no idea that COVID was going to be a thing, and then we had to deal with a little bit of a interesting delivery. You want to give a little overview of that?
Not really. Listen, it's cruel to.
I don't know if I've heard this story.
It's
but
cruel
maybe
to
I
COVID
shouldn't.
test a laboring woman. Is all that I'll
What?
say.
Yeah, she was a champ.
I was like in the
The
COVID
thing in the nose and everything.
Yeah, I mean, gave birth in July, and it's
pretty warm then, no?
Yeah, it's pretty warm, and laboring is not easy. And
I hear.
so they check temperatures a couple times before admitting you. And shocking, I had a fever because I'm laboring and it's July, so I had to wait in the COVID ward. But I didn't have COVID, so it all worked out in the end. But
Oh man.
I was just upset because I left my beef jerky in the car, and I had to wait like 5 hours to get it. I was starving.
You couldn't get back to the
No,
because you were
no.
because you were quarantined.
Were you
Yeah, they came in with spacesuits and everything.
it's true.
Oh man.
And I was like, I have beef jerky in the car. I'm so hungry.
That was definitely the toughest part of the day.
For sure.
So yeah, so it's been interesting. So okay, so I wanted to have you guys on, and we've talked about this, but just to provide a little bit of a testimony on the way the Lord's worked in your life, particularly how the Lord's worked in your lives through community. We've been talking a lot broadly about the importance of community, particularly this fall as we're relaunching a number of community groups, re-emphasizing this. I think it was, we all look back over the last year and a half, both the blessings and lack of genuine community and relationships, and both encouraging people to experience and enjoy that and make sure they're reconnecting if they haven't connected, but also as an open door to those that maybe haven't experienced that kind of community or even that type of community here, like genuine Christian community where the Lord is working in powerful ways through those relationships. I think there's a lot of people that are new to the church too that haven't necessarily experienced that. And so wanted just to get a little bit of the story of how the Lord's worked in your lives, in your family, through community, Christian community generally, and through the community here at Cornerstone. How did you first get involved in community, in a community group here at Cornerstone?
I can take this one.
Yeah.
So we actually took an equipping class 5.5 years ago.
Yeah,
maybe
5 to 6.
5 to 6
years
years ago. And Carlos Corral was leading it,
Mm.
and we were the only attendees at the time.
Really?
It was
Yeah, we were waiting
it
for
was a very
someone.
intimate group, and so it was just the three of us hanging out for a few weeks in a row. And
Okay, wait. Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah.
If this was Pastor Brian, he would have canceled the class. We always make fun of him. We're like, hey, if it's like 2 people, like it's worth it. He's like, I think a class needs to have like 5 people. Or he's gonna like
let us be
cancel
a
it.
testimony.
Yeah,
let us be
no.
a testimony
That's
for,
awesome. It works.
for small classes.
So you guys and Carlos
Yeah.
taught the class.
Taught the class, and
The private session.
it was a
Yeah.
private session. Yeah.
Hey, but you only had to pay the group rate.
That's
so,
right.
That's
you
true.
know.
That's right.
That's true. We got
It's
our
fantastic.
money's worth for sure. Yeah, and we had tested a couple community groups, and I think at the time we weren't members yet, but we're still kind of finding our place. Right, we were newly married, new to LA. We had moved from Chicago around the same time we got married, and so. Like, I don't know, we weren't really in a place for like committing to anything yet, but Carlos, I mean, if you've met him, you know, he's a gem of a human. And so, yeah, him and Jackie had us over to a community group. And after that, that was that. We just started going. And shortly after that became members of the church.
Okay, so I didn't prep you with this question, but I'm curious because we first met pretty soon after you moved to LA, right?
Very soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very, very shortly after.
And I remember that process. It was, I mean, we really enjoyed getting to know you guys. Your wedding was really sweet, and I remember thinking, just from experience and experience of people in LA, like I was praying that you would get connected and stay, connected. I think sometimes people show up, they're new to LA, they're checking things out, and they kind of like bounce around. And I remember, and it's partially because I've like thought about like multiple people. I'm like, I really hope they don't like just bounce around or like, okay, this is cool for a season, but then we get busy and, other things are a priority and, we'll like show up now and then. But like, what would you say to somebody who is in that situation now, is maybe in their first year in LA and is thinking about getting connected, but maybe they're, a little bit like hesitant. If they were in that season when you weren't connected yet and you were kind of trying things out and you hadn't found a sweet spot, how would you encourage somebody in that position today?
I would just
From
say,
your experience,
just be open, and trust in God's process. Definitely pray about it, especially moving. If you're new to any type of environment, there's an acclimation period, and I would just say keep an open mindset because you got to allow things to develop. And I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that we kind of trusted the process and trusted, the fact that we went to those classes and kind of let ourselves be guided by God's leadership. And I'm thankful that it's, led us to where we are today.
Yeah, I would say a place like LA is very transient, right? In that people are coming and going for jobs, and even I can think to Matt and myself, we've changed and had a number of jobs in even our 7, 8, almost 8 years here. But it's really like laying roots and God laying roots in your life because it is uncomfortable to come sometimes into a room of people that have these deep relationships, but 5 years in now into being in our community group, I see so many fruits from it. Even at the time, if it was uncomfortable and maybe we, didn't fully feel in place right away, being faithful in that way has really shown itself.
That's cool. That's so encouraging. So what maybe you can give us just some highlights of things you've seen the Lord do in your lives through. Sometimes we kind of assume community is important, right? Like, oh, it's what you want. So like you should, like, how have you seen the Lord work in your lives and your family through those relationships? Maybe in ways that wouldn't have happened if you were kind of trying to navigate this Christian life on your own, even just with each other.
I mean, I can go first because I have like one example that's very forefront in my mind is becoming a mom for the first time in a pandemic. We're so blessed with just a faithful community group. But for me specifically, just Christian women friendships that run so deep. I mean, we don't have family in LA, or we haven't for a long time. We have a 27-year-old brother that, when it comes to kids, isn't the most helpful. But I can just remember, in my son Julian, our son Julian was born in July, and that was still a very scary time. Like, vaccines weren't around, and Julian, love him dearly. God has given us for a reason, but he doesn't sleep. And I remember one day, again, going back to the lovely corrals, Jackie coming over and like bouncing Julian on a ball so I could sleep for 30 minutes. And like, in the time of a really scary time, right, where like COVID was crazy and people still didn't really know what was going on. And so really feeling supported in like a hard time in our lives, from meals and visits, and just really feeling encouraged. And that is something that I've been so blessed with.
Yeah, I think to go along with that point too is, we had the ability to do those same type of actions for them as well. When we first joined our community group, it was kind of split down the middle. Half of the group was composed of folks with kids, and the rest of us, we were just like single married couples. And now, however many years later, I think we all have kids.
There's a lot more children.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that was the thing too, is like, I recall, in times of need for our other community group families, I would go over and watch the kids for them for various reasons. And, that kind of was almost a primer as far as like, okay, cool. I'm able to help these folks in these certain ways. And then they kind of returned the favor when it was our turn. And I didn't expect that. It was something that like you just do for each other, which was really something special.
Yeah. I mean, it you begin to see it is the reality of experiencing family in a place where oftentimes, some people do, but lots of people don't locally, right? Have that, and the Lord provides it through that. It's it's interesting to me because so you experienced this showing up to a group where a number of people already had kids, right? As a young married couple, what made you go, okay, yeah, this could be the group for us? Not like, oh, there's kids here. Maybe we need to find something else that's, more. I think sometimes people end up looking for exactly their life stage or whatever, instead of kind of embracing that diversity. What was that like for you guys? Or did you feel that way and you just felt trapped? So,
well, I think Leanne and I both have always liked kids, so it was really easy to just go and I'm a very playful, fun, goofy type of dude. And that was always a joy, is to like interact with their kids and have fun in that regard. But it just seemed like a good fit. Do you want to touch more on that? But
yeah, I mean, I think two things come to mind is like, it wasn't without its challenges, right? Yeah, like when we're having conversations, some people are in different life stages that you can't relate to. And sometimes that can feel isolating until you think about it and really focus on the fact that we're all united by something bigger. I think really helped in those times where it's natural to feel different from everyone in your group. And that's because we all are so unique in all of our different places and areas and what we're doing. But I think another thing that I focused on really early on, and I know Matt has too, since he's been Uncle Matt way before he was Dad Matt.
That's right.
Is just like these children are also part of our community group, and we're called to love them as well. And so building unique relationships with them as equals as the adults in the group too, I think is something that we really tried to focus on, rather than just, the adults are in community and these kids just come along.
That is such a helpful, important, and such a sweet perspective. I'm so glad you highlighted it. Even as you were saying it, it struck me how, in my experience and for our kids, that's been the sweetest thing for me too, to see them have relationships, not just with, not just as the kids, right? Not just as the tag-alongs in the room, but to have their own unique relationships with adults. And one of the things, I mean, both philosophy of ministry wise, I think as a church, but also I think we read and are recognizing that just across the board in the church, one of the consistent themes of kids that grow up in the church and stick around in the church is relationships with other Christians and relationships with other Christians of other generations and their own relationships that that you don't have to wait till they're teens to start.
Right.
And sometimes actually some of the most meaningful conversations you can have as teens is because of, like you have with a teen is because of, I'm realizing it's like, wait, their connection is because of a conversation or an investment or some time they spent together when she was 6.
Yeah.
And that memory stuck, and now she feels like she can go to you when she's 14.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know, the Lord doesn't always, right? He moves us around, and sometimes there's a difference, but there's a unique opportunity both in longevity and even in those moments to build those unique relationships. It's such a great point.
Yeah, and I see it, you know, now that, like Matt referenced, we do all have kids in our community group, and we've grown into that. But we are parenting alongside together, right? And there's something really sweet in that, and having built those relationships and the foundation, and that we are able to parent together and to love on each other's children together because we have the foundation there, which is really sweet.
That's so cool. So cool. So on the flip side, what's been the hardest part about striving to live in community, maybe with others generally, maybe with others in LA? Like what are some of the, I mean, you've talked a little bit about it, but what's some of the challenges you have hit up against over the last few years?
I mean, I think just LA is a very difficult place to foster community, right? There's a lot of challenges in just like the spread of the city, right?
Yep.
We haven't always been West Siders. We were West Siders shortly after we got married and realized it was not for us, which is fine. But
you don't like the beach that much.
I don't like the beach that much, admittedly, which is strange living
She's
in LA.
a city girl.
I am. But so we've
Wait,
never,
you just don't like the beach, like in general, like beaches?
Yeah, I just don't like beaches that much. It's very weird. I know. It's okay.
I mean, I don't get it, but that's okay.
The sand,
I love you, but
the sand, the heat.
The sand.
I have
It's mainly
very
the sand.
pale
It's the
skin.
sand.
you don't want the
sun-
sand getting in the car.
The sun is not kind to my skin. It's a whole thing.
Did you grow up in Chicago?
Yes. Just like
Did you like the like no wave beaches?
I mean,
Not really.
not really.
Not really.
It's also
Okay.
like
Okay.
it's also
No.
kind of gross to swim in the water in Chicago.
Yeah,
like
that's
it's
true.
the dirty side of Lake Michigan.
Yeah. And these days it's a little bit gross to swim here too. So.
See, again,
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
But anyway.
pulls over beaches.
Enough derailing.
Yeah. So anyway, so Matt and I, we love Cornerstone and obviously have been committed to Cornerstone, but we've always lived east of the 405. And so in working it, it's challenging to be really intentional with your time in a place that takes a long time to get places. And it's hard to make relationships. And, I think it's important for us to foster relationships outside of our community groups as well, right? And in the world and with people that you work with. So I think being really intentional can sometimes be challenging in a place like LA, where so I think that's been the hardest part for us. And
Well, yeah, I think going along with the intentionality, and maybe say you just join a group, right, and you have all these folks from multiple different backgrounds and diversity, and being intentional in that. That was challenging, but it's also been such a fascinating thing for me personally, in the fact that it's increased my ability to be empathetic towards different people's life situations. And when you really are intentional in those conversations with people who are very different than you, you can really become a much better communicator in general, and showing somebody that you have a genuine care and a genuine interest in their life situations, et cetera, it can really make a positive impact. And then for me, it's just been like that carries out into the outside world. And if I encounter folks who may seem very different than me in the outside world, and say I want to have a conversation about coming to church or things of that nature, well, I feel like I have a much better ability to have in-depth, meaningful conversations with folks, because it's already been strengthened within my own community. I just think that that's just such a benefit from being intentional in those specific environments.
Yeah, I kind of like to expand on that a little bit. I know this is kind of going off topic from the
No,
the
but
question.
you were just, yeah.
No, but I mean, I think, I saw the benefit of community in a place like LA and to people who aren't Christians, very evident. Like this summer, we hosted a birthday party for Julian. And it was the first get together we had post COVID, and we were able to invite some coworkers of ours. And for them to see how strong and faithful our community was in a place like LA.
Right.
I mean, some people were like, "Oh, I didn't realize you had so many friends with kids," or like, "I didn't realize like you have like there's a good group here of like people who really love on Julian." And I think for people to see it in action was really powerful, right? To see that we all have something that creates really deep relationships, and that's our faith.
Yeah, and begs all sorts of questions.
Right.
And that's so cool. That's so cool. And I think what's beautiful about it is it demonstrates how some of these things that are the harder parts, the intentionality through it, like God redeems in some really significant ways, which doesn't downplay the fact that some of these things are genuinely hard. Like they're difficult, and community in LA is tangibly more difficult than other places. But I think sometimes we see that then as a like, oh, that means we can't have it. I think what we realize is that actually there's almost more sweetness to be had.
Totally.
As God works and does the things that only He can do.
Yeah.
Right? Because He's got to do it. All right. So we've talked about this a little bit. I mean, obviously it's the context, but what have the past couple of years been like as you've navigated this season within your community? Was that, how did you guys navigate it? How did your community navigate it? And how did that kind of ebb and flow for you?
I think initially it was really challenging. Everybody still wanted to be gathering together, and we just all of a sudden couldn't. I think, initially, while it was challenging, focusing on the fact that we have the capabilities to do things like Zoom calls, like those are the positives of it. And those are like, I'm so thankful that we were able to do that on a regular basis because it was the only way to connect for a long while, you know?
Yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because I've been reflecting on this a little bit as we've been changing how our community meets, and it looks different. I feel like every couple of months, and again, that's because of the increased humans joining our group. But I in a way, God worked through things like Zoom to maybe show us new ways of connecting that are more meaningful for the stage that our group is at right now. And so what I mean by that is like, I remember when we first joined, there was very few littles, and the littles that were there were able to come along for, late night discussions and could fall asleep to a movie or be held, right? Because we're talking like babies, where now there's a lot of kids and a lot of bedtimes and a lot of things to navigate. And so we've come up with a schedule where there's a lot of in-person for either the women in the group or the men in the group, some all family hangs and things like that. But we still keep a monthly Zoom where we can actually have adult conversation without an interruption because it's past bedtime. And we remove the stress of, who might be missing because they have to stay home with the kids or who's unable to get a sitter. And it's been really sweet for us of something that we've just continued, even though, COVID is easing and things like that. That I don't know how it would look otherwise if we, tried to do it in person in our current life stage.
Like a fascinating added tool.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I think it's even a helpful thing to think about. Number one, what tools have we added? What things have we learned over the last couple of years that actually strengthen our community, right? The Lord's like redeeming. And I also think that gives us an appreciation. I think it's easy to like bag on Zoom because we're all like, or other things that we've tried because we're all just like exhausted by it. At the same time, we've experienced just some incredible opportunities to be connected, stay connected, and maybe even some exposure to some incredible tools in different ways of connecting that are a unique, I think, huge blessing as we think about what community looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
going forward.
And I think too, like even in the past couple of years, I think. I can't believe I'm saying a couple of years.
2022, right around the corner.
wish I could just be like the past few months,
Yeah,
past
right.
couple of years, is that community still like lives on in different ways, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I said, so I know we really felt it in having Julian in the midst of COVID and in the midst of 2020. And we felt it in meals. We felt it in, stoop hellos and distanced, time together and things
Yeah.
like that, where community and meeting together is still so important. And having, everyone recognize that and maybe push ourselves outside of our comfort zone for the purpose and the intentionality of meeting together as a group. And so while it definitely looked different in 2020 than it did in 2019, the intentionality was still there and community was felt in a number of ways.
Yeah. Well put.
As well put. It's really interesting. I think of how what a unique opportunity community and getting both either getting connected or staying connected or going deeper in, even in this moment, is for us. Number one, because of how needed it is. Number two, because both of you are an example. Like you're at varying degrees of return to in-person work, right? Like you're still in the garage. There's all sorts of differences that, and I think a lot of people are experiencing that, right? Where like things career-wise, things in a lot of different sectors are not like back to around people, getting community, getting engagement. But we do have this unique opportunity to connect, to prioritize, to dive in now where I think sometimes it's easy to think, oh, it's been a year and a half. Things are like transitioning. So the need's not as great because things are like normalizing, but they're not, first of all, they're not normalizing that quick.
No.
And number two, I think after the last year and a half, that need's greater than ever before, not less.
Right.
And so anyways, it makes me think of what an important moment we're in for that. When you guys think about looking forward, and how do you hope Christian community will shape and support your family, your relationships with the Lord, in the years to come? How in light of what you've experienced over the last number of years, what does that look like when you picture it, or even when you talk about it?
I think for me, community has such a stronger, more like present feeling in becoming a mom, in that, LA is a beautiful city, but a challenging city. And having a child here sometimes causes me to change my perception of it. Right. And not always for the best. And I'm really looking forward to having Julian grow in Christian community, but also having that be like our home base in a way, and having him go out into the world in LA. There's a lot of fear and unknown with that. But knowing that we have such a strong community for him to be grounded in Christ and to see the model of that, I don't think that we could. I don't think we could raise him in LA without that.
Yep, I completely agree. And back to your original point, Leanne, where you said we don't have immediate family members here outside of some of one of her siblings. But yeah, it's having that group of people. We're all united with a common denominator in Christ, and having them be who we lean on is something really special.
It is really special. It's interesting. As you say it, I reflect on it from, where I'm sitting. My oldest two are 15 and 13 now. And I think that's exactly right. I think the difference maker in being able to raise them here wasn't space. It wasn't, exactly the right schooling options. It wasn't like lots of different things. It wasn't, certain opportunities or like activities or like and those all like make all those things make things either easier or harder to any different degree. Right. So I'm not saying that that's nothing, but to me, the difference maker for the investment in their lives has been the community around us, and both the local church as a whole, but also really practically the subset of that community that is these relationships that they've grown up with and been deeply shaped by, not just by us as parents. And so I'm not sure if I've reflected on it that clearly. Even just hearing you say it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so true. It's so true. It's such a beautiful picture of that. So, well, thanks so much for sharing, you guys. And any, I don't know, last thoughts you would want to either share, or something you're hoping to share, or something to leave with people who are seeking to pursue community in our midst? They don't have to be, but.
I mean, I think for me, it's when we first joined a community group, everything felt really heavy and really serious of like, oh man, these are going to be these intense Bible studies and chats every single week. And like, am I ready? Am I equipped? And it couldn't have been, further from the truth, right? Like there's a lot of richness and growth and deep spiritual discussion that does happen. But there's also just a lot of great personal relationships that you can take out of it. And so, there's a lot of fun and a lot of memories and a lot of good times to be had. And you'll grow a lot along the process of it. And so, I feel like sometimes community groups or, joining a small group can feel really overwhelming and scary. But it's really sweet. It's really, really sweet.
I feel the same way. And the only thing I would say is, again, just be open and pray about it. Trust God and let him lead you.
Yeah. I appreciate that encouragement to be open to the journey, right? Because I think that's where, in so many different ways, I think there's be some people that are listening. They're like, oh, I want to get connected to something like that, but I'm not yet. And we'd love to connect you. You can, I think we've probably told you all the different ways to do that, but you can just email June, Joon, at Cornerstone WLA and get connected. But I think there might also be some people that are feeling like, well, I feel like I'm connected, but that's not my experience, right? I'm struggling with this for either logistical reasons or personal reasons, or just the dynamics. And I just want to leave you with two. Like I'd encourage you, if you're listening and you feel like, gosh, I'm really struggling because that's not my experience and I don't know what to do. Like let us know. Like we want to facilitate that for you, and do what we can to get you connected. And, I think there are seasons where these relationships are sweet, and there's seasons where they're hard. And part of that makes that redemption of that is what makes it sweet. But we want to walk that journey together with you. And just like Matt said, I would just encourage you to be open, to prayerfully recognize that this is a journey, and that the Lord does want to do powerful things through these relationships, and know that He will.
Amen.
Well,
yeah, and I would just say it takes time, right? Like, God's investing in us, and we're investing in these communities, and I wouldn't expect to go once or twice or three times even, and then immediately feel like, oh, I'm home, I'm with family, right?
Totally.
Like these relationships take a lot of time, and there's richness in each season. But to your point, some are harder, and getting acclimated with a new group can sometimes be challenging. But the fruits that are to come are worth the time.
That's a great way to put it. There's richness in each season. So it's such a good reminder. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I really appreciate it.
This is really fun.
Yeah.
It's great to see
Should
you.
we renew our vows?
Good to see you guys. Here we are. We'll turn it off. We'll do an 8-year check-in.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you guys. And thanks everybody for listening. Let us know if there's any way we can be serving you or getting you connected. We are open doors and would love to help you do that. So thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. We love you, and we'll see you on Sunday.